Hi, this is Phil Hinton, and welcome to our wrap-up video from CES 2011. And Steve, it's been your first trip over here to Vegas, and it's been eventful.
It has been eventful, yeah. Sadly, in terms of the audio-video side of things, it's been a bit of a disappointment for me. The major manufacturers weren't really releasing anything new this year. Basically, it's all been refinements of 2010 technology. So basically, what we've had are bigger displays, thinner bezels. We've had more 3D, a hell of a lot of 3D, camcorders, cameras, laptops with lenticular screens. We've also had what some are calling smart TV, or more familiar as Internet TV. Once again, it's really just an extension of the existing platforms with more connectivity, more file sharing. So overall, I mean, they're very nice products and they look great, and we'll be looking forward to testing them come later on in the year. But in terms of innovation, very little new or exciting as opposed to, say, last year, when obviously 3D was about to launch and everyone was very excited in that. So fun. I mean, I had a great time and I really enjoyed it. But yeah, in terms of the new tech, a little bit of a disappointment.
And we've had our own problems out here this week. Obviously, it all started with me going down with the flu a few days before flying out to Vegas. So the flight over was interesting, with ears that wouldn't pop for 11 hours and coughing and spluttering everywhere. And that's why Steve's played a starring role in the videos, is because up until today I really haven't been able to speak and put a sentence together without the cold getting in the way. And Steve, you did your back in. I did
my back in, so when you see me in the videos, remember that I'm such a professional that even though I'm in absolute agony, you just can't tell.
Professional. Okay. The other thing on the show floor is obviously CES. It's massive. You've done IFA now. You've done CEDIA in the US. You didn't really believe me, did you, when I said it's the biggest show on the planet? And I think it's lived up to that.
It definitely has. I mean, I think in terms of the size of the halls and the size of the stands, IFA is a bit bigger. But in terms of how much is crammed into those halls and how many people are here, nothing can prepare you for that. You're talking 35,000, 40,000 people a day. It's just everything. You're queuing, pushing through crowds. We were both slightly upset about the fact that just about anybody these days seems to classify as a journalist. Yeah. So the press rooms were full of people, bloggers sitting there, writing whatever they're writing. Yeah, it is definitely, and hopefully some of the videos will capture the feeling of all the excitement and the crowds at the show floor. And it was there were some great events though, because I really enjoyed the Panasonic 20th Century Fox directors panel.
Well, that was just absolutely stunning. I mean, being in the same room as Baz Luhrmann and Oliver Stone and Michael Mann and just listening to those guys talking. I mean, the video, which is up online, is 30 minutes long, but I'd have been happy standing there for 3 hours listening to this.
It was fascinating and interesting too, because you had Baz Luhrmann talking about what he was trying to achieve when he made Moulin Rouge and Romeo and Juliet, which were basically 3-strip Technicolor. And he said basically he felt he didn't really get there until the Blu-ray, and he spent 1,000 hours colour timing Moulin Rouge and Romeo and Juliet to get the look that he had in his head. Yeah. And they showed a clip from Moulin Rouge and it just looks spectacular. I must admit, I'm going to rush out and buy that one straight after.
Well, I can tell you the disc's fantastic, and we also discuss it on the Movies podcast this month. But going back to the actual products that were on the show floor, lots of stuff that we just didn't have time to cover on the videos this year because, like you said, Steve, I mean, it takes a good 2 hours to get into the show because of the queues for the buses, queues for monorail, queues for taxis, and then once you get in there, it's a throng of people that you've got to battle through to get through there. But there was lots of I wouldn't say innovation, but progression in terms of tablets. Everybody seems to have a tablet these days. Steve, you've had plenty of tablets this week for your back. And the other thing was internet TV, connectivity, smart TV, Viera Connect. I'm trying to think of some of the other words that we're using there. And it was interesting that Samsung and LG both called their system Smart TV. Both South Korean companies. Do you think that...
Yeah, I must admit, going around the Samsung stand was very reminiscent of going around the LG stand. They also had a sort of a panel that you could write on, which is obviously aimed at schools and teachers and things like that. But that was identical, basically.
Yeah.
The smart TV was identical, and certainly the actual platform looked very similar as well. Now, yeah, I guess they're both Korean companies. They're both owned by the Korean government. I'm sure they do share some tech. Why wouldn't they, really?
Yeah.
Interestingly, one of the things that LG did, which I thought was quite a good idea, was launching a smart TV upgrader. So if you don't want to buy a new TV, but you'd like some internet connectivity, you just plug it into the HDMI socket. It has built-in Wi-Fi, and there you go. Your old TV now is a smart TV. So that was quite a good little idea, and I'd be interested in getting that myself, actually.
Of course, the other big news, well, it wasn't big news, we all knew about it last year, but obviously was the release of the Star Wars Star Wars Saga on Blu-ray. You're going to have the option to buy the first 3 films, the second 3 films, or all 6 films plus 3 discs of extras.
30 hours, I think, of additional...
But that's all we got told.
Yeah, and I must admit, as an event, it was a little bit disappointing because, first of all, Stormtroopers came out to the Imperial March, and that was quite exciting. And then this guy who was way too short to be Darth Vader, and was actually shorter than the 2 guys that were on stage with him, stumbled out, and he obviously couldn't see where he was going with the mask on. It was a little bit comical at that point, and unfortunately our sound was being messed up by the Panasonic mixing desk as well, which was unfortunate. But anyway, September, we can all buy Star Wars. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's going to be a chance to buy Star Wars in its original form. It'll be the tinkered with version, probably the latest version with even more tinkering than the last time when it came out on DVD. But yeah, definitely looking forward to that myself. Yeah.
Some other innovations. Sir Laurie Finchman from THX is a fantastic guy. You'll have seen him in some of our videos going back in the past there. The guy is an absolute legend in the industry. He used to work for KEF. He developed a lot of stuff loudspeaker-wise before he moved over to THX back in the early 90s. And he developed THX Ultra 2, and he's just developed this new system, this new speaker array system, which
is steerable, basically.
Yeah, it's steerable. So to give you an example, because we were baffled when we were first...
Yeah, if you watch the video, I'm not concentrating, I'm actually trying to understand what he's talking about.
Yeah, and it takes a little while for your head to get around what it's actually doing. But to give you an example, if you had Grandma sitting on the left-hand side of the living room, Mum's sitting on the right-hand side, and Dad's in the middle. Dad wants to watch TV, Mum wants to listen to music, and Grandma wants peace and quiet. Basically, with this array, you can direct sound from the TV in one source directly at the dad sitting on the sofa, and you can direct the other sound to Mum, who wants to listen to Michael Bublé, and Granny can sit in relative peace and quiet because the audio is being directed at those people. But the other flip of the coin is obviously you can widen the sound, and the whole point was to get over the sweet spot. Sorry, you can see the coals playing on me, and widen that up. And that's always been a thing with THX. They've always said with the home cinema systems and sound systems, it's always been designed specifically that, you know, there's not one sweet spot. You want a large area where people are going to get the same effect. This does it, and it does it in an amazing style. It's not a product that's going to be on sale anytime soon, but in terms of what we heard, I thought it was really
Innovative.
Oh, give me a drink.
In a show which was a bit thin on innovations, it was one of the most interesting things we saw, I think, in terms of really trying to do something completely different. I mean, I didn't even know you could direct sound so specifically like that.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, really.
Yeah, I mean, another example was coming into an airport, immigration, and you got different lines of people who speak different languages. You can direct announcements to each one of them without the sound spilling out to other lines where you don't want people to hear that audio. So fascinating stuff. Also, Media Director from THX, it's coming to market later this year, which we're looking forward to. And the last thing from THX was 3D certification, something that everybody on the forums is interested in at the minute because there's no specifications out there. But it was quite interesting speaking to Kevin off camera, and you're going to mention this a lot more in your blog, is how they've based their certification system on the DCI cinema spec, which is 4-foot Lamberts, which we knew was the case of putting on the glasses. You got that, but didn't actually realise that that was actually a specification for DCI.
Yeah, well, I mean, it goes back to the old principle, they want you to see what the director intended. And in 3D at the cinema, those films are colour timed for 4-foot Lamberts, and therefore they're trying to replicate that in the home environment. And I guess that makes sense. But what it does mean is, particularly with projectors, I think you're going to need to have a really dark room to watch 3D material. I checked a couple of projectors out at the show floor, and in terms of brightness, they're pretty good. I mean, the X9 looked fantastic. Great 2D, really great 2D, and great 3D as well. Very little crosstalk and bright enough. I mean, as you can see, it was obviously slightly dimmer, but in terms of the material, that's what it's supposed to look like. It's the world's first THX certified projector, along with the X7, and that's the way THX have designed it. They're trying to replicate the cinema experience, which has always been their philosophy, and it continues to be so. Yeah. And then, as you say, in the absence of any industry standards, that's the logical conclusion to make, is to go for digital cinema standards, I guess.
The other 3D projector we looked at was on the Sharp stand. It was relatively bright once you put the glasses on. Unfortunately, motion-wise, left a lot to be desired on what we were watching there. Now, glasses-free 3D, it's quite hard to say when you got a cold, but basically, Steve, this is 50-year-old technology that's being repackaged for the public, being repackaged on a show floor here, and it looks like 50-year-old technology. Yeah,
I mean, they certainly addressed one of the issues, because I saw one about a year and a half ago that was very low resolution. Yep. I mean, now they're much higher resolution. They were using a 4K display for one of them. But obviously, as soon as you move your head off axis, the 3D image starts to fall apart, and actually can get quite uncomfortable to look at. Your eye gets confused. We're not there yet. What is interesting, I guess, is with tablets or the viewfinders on camcorders or mobile phones or Game Boys, I guess, then a lenticular screen makes sense, because you're only ever going to be looking at it directly on, and then it's not a problem. But with displays, we're not there, and we're not going to be there. Well, I'm not sure we'll ever be there. I mean, how they're going to come around the problem of off-axis viewing, I don't know.
Well, the whole thing with the Toshiba, they really pushed it, but every manufacturer had their version on their stands, and I've got to say, I've found that a little bit misleading in terms of they were trying to push it as a news story, as the big thing that's going to happen this year, and to be honest, the resolution's not there, the quality's not there, and you've got to sit in a sweet spot, and we've just been talking about getting away from sitting in a sweet spot, so it goes against the ideal family situation where you've got people sitting on a sofa. If you happen to sit in the wrong place, the effect's ruined for you.
But I guess the manufacturers are acutely aware of the fact that there's a large amount of consumer apathy towards 3D when it involves glasses. Whenever I talk to people who aren't in the industry, and you mention having to wear glasses, they immediately turn their noses up and say, "Oh, I don't want to do that." So I can understand why they're pushing it and why they're quite, but they're really ramming 3D down our throats, aren't they? It's like you're going to have it whether you want it or not.
Did we ask for 3D?
Yeah. Is the content there?
No.
That's the other problem, I think, is the content. And doing things, I mean, I understand why Panasonic have done it. You've got to play the game, everybody else is doing it, but having the biggest film of all time, a film specifically designed for 3D, that you can't buy till February 2012 is madness. In terms of pushing it as a mass market format. Now, interestingly, one of the things that I do agree with is LG's approach, which is A, to give the consumer a choice. They do active shutter and passive, which they've now rebranded as Cinema 3D to connect the passive system with the passive system that's used in the cinema, which people are very familiar with. And in fact, you can even take your real 3D glasses home from the cinema and use them with LG passive displays. And they're saying, if you have your friends around to watch a football match, and there's 10 of you, say, that's 10 pairs of glasses. That's not feasible with active shutter. You're talking about £1,000, over £1,000. That's more than a display cost. So yeah, I honestly think that any chance of mass market acceptance is going to would involve passive, just because of the fact the glasses are practically free, and it's so much easier. There's no syncing, there's no flicker, there's no crosstalk. I mean, the TV I tested, no crosstalk. And interestingly, one of the things I did really like and excited me at the show was JVC, who I mean, I don't know when it's going to be launched, or even if it may not even be launched in the UK, but it was a 21:9 passive In fact, they were also calling it Cinema 3D, a passive LCD display. And it looked really good, didn't it, Phil?
Well, it did. You went, obviously I've seen the JVC projectors, so you went to have a look at the JVC projectors, and while I was waiting on Steve, I sat and watched the loop about 3 times, and I know what a lot of you guys on the forums are saying about you want it full HD, 3D and so on, but to be honest, it's the same as the old 720 and 1080 argument, you know, all about your viewing distance. And if you're at a reasonable viewing distance, a normal viewing distance, with the passive TV, I think you're going to be pretty hard pushed to notice.
Unless you do a side-by-side comparison, maybe.
Unless they're side-by-side, or, you know, you're used to super sharp images. But even still with 3D, you're not going to get that. So in terms of the passive technology, like what JVC are doing with Cinema 3D and LG with Cinema 3D, I think in terms of mass market, it's going to be popular.
I personally would rather give up some resolution but have no crosstalk.
Yeah, and it was more or less crosstalk free. A little bit of jaggies here and there, but then again, you know, none of these technologies perfect. I guess we've got to finish off with a couple of interesting things. Panasonic released their tablet, but interestingly, that came under the Viera Connect system, and that looks like. If it does everything that they say it's going to do, and this is Panasonic, will it make a big difference in the market?
Well, I mean, it's an interesting idea to have a tablet that's specifically linked to your display. You know, you can use it as a system remote. You can do other things on it that you can do on a tablet. You could take footage and then you just flick your hand and it goes from the tablet straight onto the TV. Yeah. It's nice. It's like, but to be honest, a lot of this stuff, it's nice. It's cool, very cool. Do I want it? I'm not so sure. I was really impressed with the technology at Grace Notes. They had a way where you had your iPad or iPhone or whatever, Android, and it can actually listen to what you're watching.
Yeah,
and you can change the channel.
Listen is not a technical term.
And that's not a technical term. I mean, it literally is listening.
Yeah.
You change channel, and it then within a few seconds brings up information about what you're now watching. I mean, I don't know how that works, but that was quite impressive. But once, you know, so I guess it's that kind of, sometimes people like to sit there maybe with the laptop open looking at things about the movie or TV program they're watching at the same time. It does it automatically for you. Very impressive. Do I want it? Well, maybe, maybe not. But the technology itself is becoming quite awesome, frankly.
And talking about Panasonic, we also have to talk about plasma. Not just Panasonic, but LG and Samsung on the show floor this year. LG really getting behind plasma, which is, I suppose, a bit of a surprise given that, you know, only 2 years ago we were talking about perhaps the death of plasma when Pioneer went out of the market. There wasn't any sort of real competitor out there. But given the last 2 years of time and the fact that sales are actually up for plasma screens for both companies, quite refreshing to see that LG and Panasonic in particular are really still pushing that technology. Yeah,
definitely. And I think, as we said before, very impressed with the way that LG's raised their game in terms of all their displays, but especially their plasmas, which did suffer from weak blacks in the past. But the 2010 line was very good, and we're looking forward to testing the 2011 line. The new Panasonic plasmas, they've redesigned the look, and it's quite sleek and stylish. I really like it. Yep. Whether it can handle 50 hertz, we'll have to wait and find out. Obviously, over here in the States, it's 60 hertz, so you couldn't test for it. But when they come in for review, we'll definitely test for that. And yeah, no, it's good to see that the plasmas are still here and large size screens up to 70 inches, 75 inches, or some of them.
Obviously, this is America, though. Everything's big over here, including the people. But
Phil looks slim in America.
But the thing is, we're talking about the big screen sizes and all the rest of it. Plasma's great. LCD's still around because OLED failed to turn up to the party.
It did. Despite Samsung's best efforts to confuse everyone by still calling their LCD TVs LED TVs, there were some OLED. There was one OLED there, basically.
31-inch, which we saw in Berlin.
Yeah, the 31-inch from LG. As far as I'm aware, LG seemed to be about the only manufacturer that's still investing in the technology. It looked great, didn't it? I mean, it looks fantastic.
It's a fantastic technology, and obviously we pushed our friend George as well about.
He was non-committal, but he laughed, and I got the impression that something might be in the pipeline. So.
Yeah,
but it's going to be expensive. That's the thing.
Yeah.
When it does come out, it will come. Maybe not this year, but certainly next year, I guess, 50-inch OLED, it'll come. But it's not going to be cheap. But I guess if you want the best, you have to pay for it.
Of course, it's an international show out here, so a lot of the products are US specific, but there are some products which will transfer over to the UK as well as the rest of the world. Because you get everybody coming to this show, it's the start of the year, it's the most popular show because it's the start of the year. You get the roadmaps for the next year ahead, the next 12 to 18 months. You can see what technology is coming along. In terms of somebody like me who's an editorial manager, I like to try and plan the year out so we know what we're going to cover on the forums for you, we know what's coming up, we can organise meetings and so on. But the other sort of flip side of that is the foreign press, and I was basically taken to one side by a Korean cable TV company and interviewed for about 30 minutes, and given the fact I'm struggling to talk here, I think I did quite well talking for 30 minutes.
You did. It was the most talking you've done all CES, and it was quite fun. Actually, to be honest, it was my high point of the show, seeing Phil at the interview being interviewed.
It gives you an idea of what actually, you know, flipping the coin round. I always think it's easy asking people questions. When you're the person that's been asked the questions and you have to answer them, different ball game altogether, especially when you're on camera. But good fun, and of course Vegas is good fun. Now all the videos are up there. We hope you have enjoyed our coverage. We hope you have gotten something out of it, and I guess in concluding our video here, Steve, your final thoughts on CES 2011?
My final thoughts, basically, as I said at the beginning, a bit of a disappointment in terms of new technology. It's basically more of the same, but maybe slightly better or bigger. Some other, in the sort of going down the line, future tech, there's some interesting things in the pipeline. I quite enjoyed the Sony Headman thing where you had OLED screens for each eye.
Yeah.
That was fun. That would be great for gaming. Overall, it was a bit of a disappointment, but you know, there's definitely going to be some very, very classy TVs coming out in 2011. Absolutely cutting-edge stuff with, in terms of the screens, the design, the internet TV, the 3D capability. So certainly some interesting stuff for us to test later in the year. And so I'm looking forward to it.
Of course, the last 2 years, I think the recession really has played on a lot of companies' R&D budgets, and that's perhaps why we're seeing an evolution rather than a revolution in terms of technology. But I guess the encouraging thing here at CES 2011, compared to last year's show, I would hazard a guess that the numbers are up threefold on last year. It was extremely busy this year, massive queues for everything, massive people on the show floor. I guess that might signal that the recession's well over now, and we might actually see companies investing now in the future, in new technology, and maybe 2012 CES is going to be the show where we get that big technology coming to market.
Yeah, fingers crossed, hopefully.
Okay, well, we hope you enjoyed our coverage. That's all we got time for from Las Vegas. We're off for a week's holiday, but we'll see you all again in late January. Thanks for watching, and take care.